Somewhat apropos to what I was pointing out in general last week, and the last several weeks, about the combination of the complexity and the simplicity of this. And as I pointed out in some times past, especially to newer people, the apparent lack of some sort of showbiz passion, or as people would be inclined to think of in the beginning, they'd be expecting some sort of spiritual passion. All of you are accustomed to some sort of passion, even if, God forbid, you grew up as an Episcopalian. You're aware of the fact that inside of religions, no matter how it was taught or presented at your forefathers' church, that if there is some sort of secret plan, some sort of secret work that men could involve themselves in, it would surely be a passionate affair. It does not have to be as bad as the fundamentalist preachers on television. It does not have to be as bad as a deranged rabbi. But surely, if there is any reality to some sort of secret, personal work that a man could do on himself, it would be a very passionate affair. But by now, some of you should realize that the maps I have drawn out in talking about the life of life and the body of life is no mere allegory. The words themselves do not explain anything. Hence, some of my original warnings not to take this as some form of anthropomorphism revisited. There is an absolute reality to it. But you can begin to see everything that's going on in man's life as an attempt for man to be a translator. It is as though man is speaking as an attempted translator of life's own inaudible voice. Someone, even tonight, wrote me a kind of question. The basis of it was, if no one is really responsible for what they're doing, then if the concept of karma, if it existed, would it not be a truly unjust law? I would assume, I would hope, in my foolish way, that by now anyone who has stayed with this for even a reasonable length of time will note that I have not talked about karma, reincarnation, life after death, any of the good old things that you would normally expect. And if someone asked me directly, what is there to karma, I would make some intelligent response like, pfft. And it's not simply, if you recall, that it's humanity's imagination, because imagination is real. But I cannot use any idea, any amount that is already in people's ordinary consciousness. Then I'm left with this truly undefined area wherein I am attempting to put on a jazz concert every time we talk, that I have to use ordinary words. I have to start out with concepts that seem fairly reasonable and then try to run it to the edge of a self-made map wherein it begins to turn on itself, wherein it begins to disappear. But the old idea of karma, it is not simply a deranged notion. It is not simply further proof of man's insanity. But also remember, any teaching, any idea you've heard of karma is not worth any more to you than whatever the latest theory is on the rise and fall of the stock market. For someone seriously involved with pursuing this, an idea of karma is just a waste of time. The same way that an idea that I'm going to live in a certain way and be reborn. So forget it literally, and I mean that literally. But the idea of karma has a reality, and this is just a prime example, a good place to start of me saying that in a very real way man is operating as a would-be translator for aspects of life's voice that is inaudible. I mean that at the ordinary level, because if you can reach a certain point, you begin to hear things that other people do not hear. And I don't mean voices. But wherein, when other people talk about such things as karma, you hear something else. You do not hear the people. If you're not operating at the same level of consciousness as they are, then just because someone hollers, "Fire, run for it," it doesn't mean that you're going to run. Or just because someone says, "I don't like you and I want you to know it," you don't have to know it. Or just because someone says, "Hey, fuck you," it's not necessary that you become the fuckee. You hear something else. You hear life talking in a particular way. So back to the question, back to the idea of karma. And the way the person put it to me was a reasonable question, that if it existed, the way everybody believes, those who believe in it, that this life in some way is simply one part of a continuing drama, and that you're living in a certain way now based upon a previous life, and if you don't want to keep your attention there, you turn it somewhere else, that the manner in which you live this life is going to dictate what happens to you in some succeeding life. But if it were true that men have almost no possibility of any real movement, then, as the person asked me, would not karma, if it existed, would that not be the epitome of injustice? And if we're left with that question, I'd have to agree. Of course, I could throw in, so what? But here's a place that I was trying to get you to consider this matter. Humanity, for thousands of years, have been talking about the idea of reincarnation and reaping what you sow. Life is talking about something. It's talking about something real, but life at another level is not using human language. So life did not, if you'll follow what I'm saying, invent the word karma. Life itself is not speaking specifically about reincarnation. But it uses the tongue of man in a certain way to attempt to translate certain inhuman ideas, the movements of life at a level that ordinarily is inconceivable to humanity. And then in a very particular way, it is using the voice of humanity to attempt to translate it. What could possibly be the inaudible reality, the transmortal reality, closer to the radical level of life itself? What could be going on there that then comes out in the tongue of man is the idea of reincarnation, karma. And you can include many other things in the reincarnation. The idea that there is either a reward or a punishment in some life after you lay down and rot. As tempted as I am, I'm not going to give a specific answer. But let me offer some possibilities for those of you who love to hear me offer possibilities and then wonder if I really know, or if I just thought about myself and wondered, since that seems to choke some people in the beginning, and I'm all in favor of choking. What is it, possibly in life, that as far back as you can find the yellow circuit talking and writing down its thoughts, the biochemical energy flowing through the brain that seem worthy of recollection and being passed on genetically and then apparently through the intellect, having to do with succeeding lives? What could possibly be going on? Let me offer you this possibility. It is the matter that life is not stagnant. It is the matter, let's give the routine ministers their due. It's a matter that life is either going up or going down. Things are either getting better or getting worse. But humanity is always talking about what is good and what is bad. Wherein I would suggest to you the possibility that life is speaking on the basis of what is profitable. Man speaks on the basis of so-called morality, that we should be living in a way that is good. All ideas, no matter what cultures, no matter what genetic backgrounds be the people composed of, no matter what hand they have been dealt, all ideas of succeeding lives, a series of lives, is based upon a concept of what is good. That if you do what is good, in some way you're going to be rewarded, either in a final life in paradise or purgatory, or you're going to be succeedingly rewarded or punished in this series of continuing lives. But it's always on the basis of what is good, that there is some forms of behavior that are morally good. I suggest to you the possibility, the translation that is coming out, is that life is talking in an inaudible voice, in a transmortal voice to itself about what is proving to be, and what has in the past proved to be, profitable. Now, many times I have talked about this, not in these exact words, and many of you think that at times you get glimpses of it. But can you follow, as ordinary people would say, theoretically, that if you had some sort of understanding that rearranged the way in which your own neurons fire, the way in which your own brain operates, and you had a full continuing knowledge of the fact that life is seeking to do that which is profitable to itself, and that all concepts of morality are back to my fictitious anatomy teachers, breed ministers and rabbis and priests and holy men, trying to explain human anatomy using kindergarten terms and talking about the genitals as wee-wees. And if you're operating at a kindergarten level, you could listen to such a lecture and you could see a man all dressed up in fine suits, credentials, and he begins to talk about wee-wees and little other things. And you could say, well, all right, I know what he's talking about. But assuming that you were my fictitious, reasonably insane man, you would have to conclude that I am probably not in a place I'm going to learn much. Because if they're going to spend years and they won't even get down to calling it what it is, that they're still talking about something else. As apparently the spectrum of their theology, mathematically, they're attempting to teach space flight, they say, is the purpose. And as far as their holy books, as far as I can make out from what they're saying, they're just barely up to the point of being fairly convinced that 2 and 2 is 4. It's not that on that basis you can say, well, that's wrong or it's foolish. It's just I don't have time for that. It's not going anywhere. That, if you could see it on a continuing basis, is the unrecognized, the real unrecognized dilemma of morality. The continuing attempt, different parts of life's body as displayed by different so-called cultures. If you look at this big card table wherein the genetic deck has been dealt, redealt, one group of people say, well, assuming they're playing 5 cards, they say, give me 3 cards. So it's not a whole new hand yet necessarily. But you got people sitting around the table that appear to be different races, different religions, different cultures. And they seem to be in conflict. There seems to be absolutely, if not a friendly game going on, a cutthroat game on the basis of morality, of fighting, of arguing with one another over that which is good. But if you could see on a continuing basis that all of man's talk about that which is good is life, inaudibly speaking, about that which is profitable. If you could see that, I'm suggesting to you, then all the binary blinders, all the binary confusion that people have as to what is good behavior, all of that is gone once and for all. That which is harder to describe, it is gone in your own internal system once and for all, because you see it and you realize on an expanded basis why in earlier times I spent so much energy speaking about the inadvisability of suffering, or of me making those periodic rules that you could not talk about your problems, that Superman doesn't cry, Supergirl does not whine, not through some theoretical, or not through an encouragement towards some theoretical attempt that I am going to become a living Superman or Superwoman. Because any notion you would have of that would come from your already binary system that there is something opposed to a Superman. It's either you are Superman or woman, or either you're not. And neither one of those two choices have any profit in it. The profit is when you understand that all feelings that you have, all sensations you have, that you have problems. It shouldn't take you a great deal of time or effort to see that the so-called problems you think you have always get down to, or you can take them down. If you see where I'm pointing to a question of, is it not the voices in me, is it not the apparent drives, motivations in me that seem to be continually speaking on the matters of that which is good? And it's not. If you operate at the ordinary level, it is the continuing feelings of self-condemnation, the feelings of extended, expected guilt. Somebody tell me what to do. This sounds pretty good, but there's not enough goddamn rules to it. Why do you keep holding back? Because there are things that I know should be forbidden. There are things that I just know, I can feel it. Never mind my forefathers' religion. There are things in me that I just feel are not acceptable behavior. There are things that I am inclined to do, there are things that I daydream about doing that does not fall into the realm of, quote, that which is good. And I surely cannot become a better person. I surely cannot become a more spiritual person unless I can follow these kinds of feelings, unless someone can help me, can point me in the right direction. And they even force me to do that which I know is good, and that's not the basis of it. If you operate on that basis, there's always a possibility of doing that which is not good. Very easily, people forget. One of my older drawings, if you remember the brain itself, at one time I drew you out I pointed out that quite literally, if we assume that right here, the part that I shaded in, is the part of your brain, the highest point in your nervous system, that is the part that constitutes you. That if I could draw in 2 or even 3 dimensions and say, this is the places where your brain is operating. This is a place where it is wired up. This is a place where it is continually alive and well, and I could sketch out a profile and say that constitutes an Irving, and draw another one and say that constitutes a Helen. But literally, not 2-dimensionally, but literally, if that is the part that is activated, I didn't do it in a truly symmetrical manner. There would be an equal side, the same kind of configuration. There would not be an operation. If that were not so, if there were not the apparent reality of opposition, at the ordinary level, the mind would not operate. There would be no conception of that which is good without a conception of that which is bad. I am not playing rhetorically, and you make a mistake to think it is self-evident. But the feelings instilled in man that there is that which is good to do, there is that which is good to think about, it cannot be taught, it cannot be passed genetically, which now we're talking on the human level beyond the scope of words, but it cannot be passed and then reach consciousness without there being its opposition. You cannot say that it is good to do this. I could stand here, I assume, I've never done it, and make up something right now and say, all right, it would be good to do so-and-so. But for me to do what I am saying, I would have to make up something and say, all right, it is good. I give you my word, it is good for you to do so-and-so. I would have to make up something right now on the spot that none of you would understand. It would have to be something you never heard of. I just have to come out with gibberish or make up a whole 4 or 5 new words and put in a sentence and say, it is good to do so-and-so. If I did that, everyone would, you'd have no choice. You'd assume, I don't understand what he said. There has got to be the simultaneous knowledge of what would be not good. You cannot make any statement without not only the inference, but the listener's already wired perception of the opposite of what you're saying exists. If you had an understanding of that continually, and you get beyond the realm of man talking about that which is good when I am inferring to you and suggesting to you that life inaudibly, transmortally, is really speaking of that which is profitable, then you begin to see that life does not really operate in opposition to itself, not on the level that man does. That life in general does that which is profitable. It takes a whole lot of little bitty steps and then goes somewhere else. Or if you recall, I pointed out to you one time or twice, and it always got a good laugh. You should have asked yourself why it was funny. Is life will try anything once. Humanity believes that they try things. Ordinary consciousness believes that it sees other humans engage in absolute folly, engage in that which is patently not good. If you stay at that level, you understand nothing. Because life will try anything, and it has tried anything. Or else there would be nothing for you to condemn. There'd be nothing for you to question. There would be no conflict going on. But life trying something once is not the same thing the way it comes out in humanity, of there apparently being two possibilities. I could do that which is good, and I could do that which is not good. Life does that which is profitable. And human consciousness then wants to say, at the binary level, well, in that case, life can do that which is unprofitable. That life has done that which is unprofitable. That's what you say. Life will try anything once, but that's a lot better than you can say for people. Because whatever you've tried once, you've tried twice, you've tried 3 times, you've tried 4 times, you've tried 5 times, and if you're over the age of 30, it is by now into the hundreds of thousands of times. Now I'm talking about rather obscure activity on your part. Those things that are more common to you, you're way up into the billions of times. It is only humanity that is left in the position that it needs to be told the few people, is don't ever think the same thing twice. Don't ever do the same thing twice unless you're getting paid for it. Well, either that or to keep from frightening the children. But life does not need the directive. Nobody is there to tell life is don't do anything more than once. It does things more than once when it's getting paid for it, when it is profitable. When it is not profitable, it'll try anything once. Because that's a lie. We don't know what anything is. There are things that life hadn't tried, but anything that you've ever heard about, thought about, read about, imagined about, anything you ever made up as far as you know, that, hey, I wonder if a man has ever gotten together with 13 Girl Scouts and got raisins and honey and then had a polar bear that could play the accordion, and then you tried to think of something you'd never heard of. If you believe, sitting there in the privacy of your dark closet imagining this, that you thought that up, you know, you should be back in the Episcopalian Church. Life thought of that. That may have been the first and last time. That is what is included by me saying life will try anything once, because life does try things, and I'm going from one dimension to another. And this is not literally true. But life tries things that it finds to be less than profitable, and that's not even the right way of putting it, but there are no words for it. But the things life tries that it only does once are by no means that which at your ordinary level you might imagine. Because what you would want to imagine are wars, inhumane behavior one person to another, bloodletting, killing prophets, having the lions eat up the prophets. That's the sort of thing the ordinary consciousness would take as being unprofitable behavior. But assuming I'm telling you the truth, please note there's been more than one war. Please note there have been more than one person killed. And it didn't stop with the scenario of Cain and Abel. So what you, at the ordinary level of consciousness, might conceive of as being unprofitable behavior, assuming as far as words go I'm pointing fairly and correctly, then you must see that that which is judged to be non-good is not necessarily that which life has only tried once. The concept of morality, of man acting as a kind of translator and speaking of, quote, that which is good, it is not that that's wrong, because it is definitely serving a purpose, or life would not have humanity continually involved with morality. And almost everyone hearing me now at some future time, almost all of you are still tied enough to ordinary consciousness that the concept of morality is quite meaningful. And if I start talking about it too much, and you try to refrain from grabbing your coat and running, your partner, your inner voices tell you that I am speaking allegorically in some way that you have yet to untangle. It's not that the concept of morality is wrong, and it is not, as you should be able to feel without me having to tell you, but it is not that this kind of activity in some way is involved with becoming inhuman, less than concerned, sans feeling. It is not that. But as many other signposts that I have tried to erect for you, you should be able to note in a rather cold and detached way, which is the same thing as hot and entangled, that if the concept of morality, whether it came from your father's religion, whether you believe that you picked it up somewhere along the way, from your intense reading and your midnight brain sessions with yourself, if there was any real profit to morality, you would not be here. You would have goodnessed yourself into some other state. You would be now a living saint. You would have no questions. There would be nothing disturbing you. You would be laying on your side with your head propped up, Buddha revisited. It is not that it's wrong. It is inefficient. It is less than nourishing. It is on a two-dimensional level. It is that which is appropriate to ordinary people. It is not going to die out next week. I am not here to try and stamp it out. But if you could see beyond that, then the very heart of what seems to be your dissatisfaction with you, what seems to be the fears of your own daydreams, the terror of your own nightmares, of you imagining throttling your mother, you imagining strangling your sexual partner, you imagine, after hearing some irrational piece of news through the media, that if you could suddenly jump in and take over country X, you would know what to do. You would be a man or woman of action, being guided by the correct hand of the gods, because there's certain things that are good and there's certain things that are not good. When you get closer in touch and you can begin to hear life talking, you hear that which is profitable, and you could try and take profitable and good, since I'm the one that pulled these words together here, and say, well, it's the same thing. Sure it is. So what? Except it's not, because what I'm talking about has no name. I just had to say profitable. But you would find that the very core of what seems to be your dissatisfaction would be swallowed up by a whole new eyeful. You would understand the basis of all morality, even when it seems to differ slightly from the different partners playing at this great poker game. That even though some of their specific tenets in their religion, one person says it's all right to eat so-and-so, and another group says it's not all right, and one person says we should pray in this manner, and somebody says we should pray in another manner. And of course, that grand old bone of contention among ordinary cynics is those fuckers don't know what they're talking about anyway, because they all got a different God, and they're all claiming he's the only one, so I'm too smart for that. Right-o. You would understand what is going on. You would understand that every player at that table, everyone that seems to be a distinct group, some race, nationality, more specifically, we could just leave it at religious groups that seem to be collected in a certain way, could be represented. At one card game that I could conjure for you pictorially, that this table sits W, X, Y, and Z groups of people, and their hands seem to differ slightly. Their sense of morality seems to differ slightly, but it's all the same. It is life talking, and a certain part of its body is reflected on the planet Earth, the race of man, that one part of his body, a certain thing needs to be going on. It finds it profitable, and therefore you've got a large number of people that won't eat grilled cheese sandwiches. And you've got another part of life's body that laughs cynically, hostilely, that ho, what a bunch of dunderheads to worry about grilled cheese sandwiches. In fact, it is one of the tenets of our religion, the great dairy god. There is no conflict going on. There is no folly going on. Humanity has not run amok. There is that which is proven to be profitable in certain areas of life's body that are less than necessary. Read profitable in other parts of its body. And this is confused to the literal mind also on this basis. I never dwell on this, but I guess few of you can hear it. Time is not linear on this planet, and there are people on this planet living in different time zones. Now, I don't mean separated by hours based on Greenwich time. I'm talking about that there are people on this planet, there are people in this country who are living in a different century. There are people in other areas of this planet, other parts of life's body, and we're not talking about good or bad now. Tut tut. That are living several centuries behind. I've also seen people laugh, attack churches. A great church led by the man in the dress, has constantly been out trying to evangelize, going into areas, and there are many people who are wired up to make fun of that, to attack it. Yes, why does the church go in there, and here was these people running around nude. Everybody was fucking most of the day and eating kumquats, nectarines, and these people went in there. These old funny collars turned on and waving the Bible or some other book. Within 2 years, they had everybody ashamed. Free fucking, easy screwing had been outlawed. Now they were going to church and singing hymns. They were wearing fig leaves and women covering up their breasts. Now people were full of shame and guilt. Now, somebody should grab these kinds of people out trying to evangelize the world and push their religion in a place that doesn't belong. It's a different culture. They shouldn't be there. That's a good shot. That's an easy shot. It's not right or wrong. Not the binary level. I'll push it just a little bit further. How about the binary and a half level? So I don't really tell you anything. I'll just hint to you. It would seem to be so easy and so appropriate for sophisticated people like you to say something is wrong. Here was these people living on this island. They didn't fight with each other. They wandered around nude. They didn't work. There was so much food there, it only, every time you were hungry, it took you all of 5 minutes to find a nectarine or a kumquat. No social classes. And these ministers came in there with this religion from another part of the world, a different culture, a different race of people came in here. Those prudes, those prigs, those walking prunes came in here, and within 2 years, they had destroyed this beautiful native culture. It would appear that there would surely be some validity to this attack. That somebody should take these kinds of people and strangle them, or tell them to stay home. Go at least to the binary and a half level, and I assure you, as pleasant as it seems, and thinking those poor, noble natives, in the name of some goddamned religion, have been corrupted, have been ruined, or as they say in the South, had been ruined. And I must suggest to you that that kind of linear thinking can be your ruination. I'm going to throw in one sentence, and this is not literally true, but I can't tell you any better. This is not literally true, and it's not this simple. But the people have not been corrupted. They're being dragged into another century. And I'm not saying it's right that they become Catholics or Baptists or whatever it was. That's not even the point. But they were living in another time zone. And this planet, in case you haven't noticed, is beginning to live more and more in one time zone. That is literally and beyond literally true. They're threatening now to keep the stock markets open 24 hours a day. Money traders, as a matter of fact, it is going on 24 hours a day. In the world of business, which is just as good a bellwether nowadays as religion, the whole world at a certain level of business is in one time zone. In fact, those who understand that have a slight edge on those that, say in New York, they say, well, it's 5:30, I'm going home, the day's over. There are people in London, there are people in Singapore that are still in operation, that understand you think the day is over. It is all getting to be in one time zone. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but you should be able to see what I'm saying, that the whole world is getting to be more and more one place. It's not going to happen next month. And I'm not telling you it's ever going to be that that every person on this planet looks alike, that all turns into one tutti-frutti colored race of people. But you must see, the evidence is right before you, it is going in that direction. For years and years, and years and years, humanity has been talking, certain voices here and there, that life would have a man or woman here and there on its body pop up and bring up the cry for the need of a universal planet, the cry against nationalism, the cry continually about partisan religious feelings. They have always been a minority, but you should see that things are going in that direction, and they're going there in an accelerated rate of speed. If you could see beyond good and evil, if you could see that life, in a sense, in a quite real sense, as far as I can tell you in words, is speaking of that which is profitable to its own growth and health, and it comes out in man the translator as speaking in moralistic terms about that which was good and proper behavior. If you could see beyond that, if you could see into that realm, you would then see clearly that people are not mistreating one another, that the apparent conflict between moralistic values is no conflict at all. It is the operations of a living system. It is a food chain that is yet to be recognized. It is a food chain in an area that ordinary consciousness has yet to recognize as part of a food chain. This is not the same level as the liver. Everyone knows that. This is a different world. From here down, I may be subject to this great ecological food chain, but up here, we're talking about another ball game. Even as we've been meeting the last several years, even as I stand here tonight and talk, many of you here in other cities, people continually clip little things out of different papers and magazines and send them to me. That here it is, some paper was reportedly read in some scientific society somewhere in the world. And somebody will see something, they'll underline it and send it to me, and they'll say, and they point out, and it's just obvious, I'm not going to try to quote one. I get a lot of you people sending me stuff. It was something I said, 6 months ago, the last week. And here it is, somebody theorizing. They may have got booed off the stage, or they may have been overcome by their own opposition. But things are coming out now in so-called respected areas. I mean, not like this kind of shit. Respected areas of the real suspicion. It's going to take a while. And it's never going to go exactly to the place that I've described it, because if it starts getting there, it will no longer be true. Don't you see, don't you see? And whoever, if I was still here doing this, or some of you were doing it, or somebody else in some other generation, and it does get to the point that the kinds of things I was describing suddenly, as though the whole scientific community or the general consciousness of humanity said, hey, this is true about the nature of the mind and the body. This is true about the nature of a food chain wherein this is in no wise exempt and it is no wise even out of line at all. By then, you couldn't say that, because if it becomes true, if the potential has now become realized, it's no longer profitable. And so the kinds of things I've been saying would be only good to wrap up fish in. It's no longer of any pertinence. But everyone suffers to some degree over a feeling of moralistic outrage or moralistic guilt. And at line level consciousness, there is no way out. I could not talk you out of it theoretically. course, as an aside, I should point out that's not true. If I weren't dealing with you people, I'll assume all of you were acceptable for the time being. If we were dealing with ordinary people, I could certainly talk them out of it, because there are people wired up to hear, hey, fuck morality. If you don't believe that, I'll move to Germany and you'll see what kind of crowd I get. Don't any of you Germans rat me. Just a joke. But there are people wired up all over this planet to hear somebody. They're submissive people waiting to hear somebody wired up to be dominant stand up. It's going on all over the world at any given time. They'll stand up and say, listen, there is no such thing as morality. You're either strong and know what you're doing, you either got some kind of spark of the fatherland or the gods, and you simply do that which you should do. You do that which you want to do. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, let's assume that you people have the potential to be at least unordinary, if not extraordinary. So it is not that I could or would try in some way to say, listen, you can't be moralistic. The reality of it, you've got to be. I can say that you can't be religious and do this, but I can also tell you that without you having the understanding, without you having the ability to truly be religious, you only go about that far and you're done for. And yet on the surface, if we just translated much of what I say, it would sound like at least a sub-theme that I was continually poking fun at the rabbis and the ministers and the Pope and religion. For without you truly being religious, you can only get about a step away from where you are, and you'll trip, fall, and strangle. But it's got nothing to do with the word religion, and it's got nothing to do with the word morality. Because as long as you're attempting, as long as you are still wired up and hung at the place that I need to be living moralistically, I need to be doing that which is good, you have the specter over your shoulder. And that's what's over your shoulder, of the continuing possibility, the continuing potential, the continuing voice, the continuing recollection, the continuing fear of the future that I am what? That I ain't going to do good. I have done non-good in the past. Right now, I want to do non-good. And I think about the future, and what I think about is non-good things. Help me, Jesus. If you can get to the point, which you've got to, I've got enough of you that do understand some of this through your own experience, it is a matter truly of that which is profitable, not just playing with words and not just saying in some way, well, listen, people, or to tell your friends, hey, I'm past the point of being worried about morality. I understand so much now. I understand that it's a matter of doing that which is profitable and help life grow. That tells you nothing. And if you attempted to tell somebody that, then I can assure you that you didn't understand it, and I can assure you that it was not true for you. But as long as you're operating on the basis of moralistic behavior, that is, as long as you're operating at line level consciousness, that is your own hand that you and your immediate predecessors have been dealt, that is your own DNA talking to you about that which is good behavior, doing that which is good and doing that which is not good, the best you could hope for, and again I exaggerate, but I assume you'll see the mathematical beauty of this in 3 dimensions, the best you can hope for is half of salvation. Or that if living a moralistic life, that if indeed I turn my attention to become a good Jew, to become a good Christian, to become a good Muslim, if you could succeed at it, you're looking at the best, all right, half the time I'll be happy. Half the time I'll be satisfied. If I die, half of me will go to paradise. When I reach the great judgment day, the gods will say, on the whole, half of your life has been a pain in my ass. Or if we're going back to reincarnation, the great gods of karma, when you die, will say, well, that life, whether you knew or not, was pretty good. So this one, every other one, this time, sucker, you're going to get it. As long as it's on the basis of either or, at the very best, there is a mathematical certainty that if it's on the basis of there's that which is good and I should be doing it, I understand it, or somebody's told me what it is and I accept it, you're only talking at best about a 50% degree of success. And again, I exaggerate, and again, I'm lying to you because this is not even what it is. But at that level, if you were the world's greatest Jew or Christian or Muslim, if you were it, if you were the shining example of that religion or some other teaching, at best, you would be half of a great person, or however you want to phrase it. You would be this great person half the time. You'd be this good person half the time. But the other half of the time, you would be the opposite. Now, if I give everyone several seconds to ponder this matter, how far removed does that sound from everyday existence now? And the wise ones among them said, verily, verily, not too far at all. But then the ordinary would say, that may be true, but I can think a good dream. I can think about that which is good. I can dream about doing better. The DNA code, as far back as Adam and Eve, if we'll take that as being the figurative beginning of all of our forefathers and foremothers, the genes then were dreaming of it. That the written literature of the Yellow Circuit, at this level, the zenith of the development of the DNA in humans, let's say, is reflected in written words. As far as they go back, they're talking about these same matters. That as soon as the genes begin to speak, they begin to speak about we should be doing that which is good. That there is a sense of morality that we should be following. So you're not dealing with anything new. But what is new, to say the very least, is to understand that it's not a matter of that which is good in a moralistic sense. It is a matter of that which is profitable, and it is not you talking, it is not the Pope or a rabbi talking, it is not your parents talking, it is not society talking, it is not some so-called culture talking. It is life's inaudible voice made overt, made physical through man, and it's life talking about, after trying and continuing to try everything at least once, about that which has proved and that which is proving to be profitable. To understand on that level is to be freed from that kind of dichotomy. And yet here I stand talking about it. Is that not amazing? Does that not make you want to cut off the tape and to go on down to Fort Myers and retire? Well, as a matter of fact, I must say it has been a revealed and continuing joy in my life to discover myself being, at least physically, on the same, at apparently the same card table as Abraham and Moses and Pharaohs and Confuciuses and Jimmy Swaggarts and Ernest Stangeles, talking about that about which there's nothing to be said. All of you should also have noticed by now that life is talked through humanity, and it comes out in all religions and all would-be mystical systems. That And the words change a little bit, but you should be able to hear that I'm pointing out to you a common denominator. That the gods in some way made man evil, or else man did something to become condemned as evil. And a variation of that is that man is made less than perfect when he's put on this planet, and the pursuit of one's religion, one's spiritual belief, is in the attempt to perfect oneself. But it's all based upon a struggle. It is all based upon a struggle to overcome this evil, or if you want to be a little more magnanimous and sophisticated, to overcome this spiritual innate inadequacy. Let me see if I can draw you back another example. That is humanity talking. Variations of that, the kernel of that, is true all throughout the body of life. More or less. There's still some people on this planet that are a few generations behind, and they're just, that's part of the purpose of the evangelist going out and grabbing and shaking these people, eating those nectarines and fucking all the time and having fun, is to tell them, no, no, no. You know, get up to date. This is the very kind of things that our dear Lord condemns. And then, of course, they have to teach them what condemn means and all that. And within a reasonable length of time, they got them, as some of you ordinary saints would say, you got them as fucked up as you do the priests themselves, they're teaching. But as I told you, that's not true. They're dragging them into a different time zone. But that was just parenthetical. And slightly variations of this is true all over the world by now, throughout the body of life, that man is here to oppose evil. The evil in himself, the evil that's been let loose upon the world. Somewhere in all of that, you should know by now, is the heart of all religions. That's the purpose in attempting to live a truly Jewish life, the attempt to really be a follower of Jesus Christ. You've got to overcome the evil in us, or in conjunction with the evil that seems to be afoot in your environment, the evil that's been set loose upon this world. That is what man is saying. But now let me suggest to you what life inaudibly, transmortally, is talking about. Is ways that humanity, this part of its body, could be functioning that would be more profitable. An example I haven't brought up in some time, that I gave everyone my word, that one of the greatest undertakings that you personally could take, one of the greatest tasks that you could set for yourself, not because I say so, but if you correctly drawn here and you correctly do it, strike that if you do it, because you can't do it incorrectly. It's the beauty of it, is to absolutely resist all of the anger in you. And it's not simply over some great unspecified spectrum of time that if you do this, the gods will recognize it, maybe not in this lifetime, but when you come back, you'll finally get paid up. It's the specifics. That there you are, and somebody known or unknown to you, family, friend, stranger, suddenly has turned on you unjustly. Somebody cheats you, or worse yet, somebody insults you. Somebody talks about you in an unfair manner. Somebody lies about you. And everything in you, all the way from your apparent most mundane drives and desires all the way up to that which some people want to attempt to recognize as being righteous and holy indignation, rises up. And whether you can see a way to take immediate overt action, you at least then commingle With the voices in you, and you become the anger, you become the desire for revenge of you can't treat me that way. And the voice is, as fast as you can find your own little system up here operating, is plotting revenge. Plot, 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 runs the same one back over. Usually takes about that long. You might come up with a variation. Not only will I do so-and-so, but hey, I'll also call so-and-so and tell them I'm going to do it. And that's it. You know it. You feel it. That's it. That's it. That's it. What I'll do. 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 It's got to be right. It's all I can think about. There is that which I give you my absolute guarantee. And some of you, this has, it just so happened, you might have find it fortuitous. You might attribute it to the great gods of serendipity. But some of you, to put it in crude terms, that was sort of your first moments of really tasting the reality of this, was under these same conditions. Was to find yourself in that very place, and you've only got, in lineal time, you've only got split seconds. That suddenly someone says, did you know that so-and-so said so-and-so about you? And don't make me drag this out. I'm talking about somebody you trusted, a member of the family, somebody serendipity. But some of you, to put it in crude terms, that was sort of your first moments of really tasting the reality of this, was under these same conditions. Was to find yourself in that very place, and you've only got, in lineal time, you've only got split seconds. That suddenly someone says, did you know that so-and-so said so-and-so about you? And don't make me drag this out. I'm talking about somebody you trusted, a member of the family, somebody that you had gone out of your way to do something for, somebody that's already in your debt, and somebody told a dangerous, an obscene lie about you. And everything in any reasonable human, it's no matter their degree of sophistication or education, that no reasonable person would not be offended by this. Everything in you is wired up to be offended, to be angry. All these are words. It's for a certain kind of energy to come in, to be transformed, and you're part of this unrecognized food chain, and it's supposed to, and you stop it. For many people, some variation of this is going to be your real moment of addicted epiphany. That's when it's all going to hit you to a certain degree. It's going to be like the first step you took. It's going to be like and it will surpass any drug experience you ever had. I hate to go into sales pitches. It will surpass any so-called mystical experience that you have ever read about, ever imagined about. Because anything you read about was in binary terms. Because anything you read about, no matter if the other person did have some experience, whatever you read about, for you to accept it and say, boy, that's what I want, there has to exist what? The possibility that's all a bunch of shit. Or the possibility it can't happen to me. Or the possibility it didn't happen to him. The possibility he imagined it. The possibility I'm imagining that this is even possible. Of course, then it's just one step to you imagining that you're seeing me here on this tape, that all this is happening. It is a kind of rerouting. It is a kind of even grounding out. I can describe it in several ways, which they're all just lies, of what happens. But notice, throughout all religions, there is the apparent moralistic directive: don't hate your fellow man. The gods, or our particular God, said, no, no, don't do it. It is not good. That's for children. That's for anatomy lessons having to do with your little wee-wees. And the real lesson is, for grown people, is that is not profitable. And it's got nothing to do with the binary concepts of good or evil. And the proof is not to be made rationally, or for me to become pseudo-passionate and trying to convey this in some spiritualistic or theoretical manner. It's for you to find out that the kind of energies that normally run me and everyone else, the kinds of biochemical and electrical energy that transfers these messages in my own little brain that is jumping, these neurotransmitters that seems to run in some kind of fashion that no one can figure out yet. This is going on out here, and there is energy continually being transferred from what seems to be one person to another, and there is a kind of neurotransmission going on that is unrecognized. It is a food chain going on, and the kinds of things that would make me, I'll go ahead and use the word again, angry, that come into me, that is a part of me. That is a part of this profile that I could draw in one's own brain and say, all right, there is Irving, there is Helen. Being angry is being sane. To Irving, to John, to Mary, to Helen. Their particular kind of acceptance and transformation of, we just call it anger. All forms of anger, all forms of hostility. For someone to say something offensive, as far as you're concerned, to you, and for you to be offended, that is sanity. That is proper. No matter that if you were attempting to be a mystical Christian and your particular system says, listen, the greatest directive our great teacher Jesus Christ said is don't hate your fellow man. All right, that's fine. Everybody agrees to that. But by God, when your fellow man hates you, you got to hate him or you'll go nuts. And you cannot, obviously, be a good Christian and be crazy. So you got to keep your sanity. So you got to go ahead and be angry when you're supposed to be angry. Then you suffer over it. I shouldn't be angry. It overcame me this time again, but I should not be angry. I should do that which is good, and it would be good not to be angry. For an ordinary person, we're playing Acme, because it could apparently is correct that someone should be able to be a real Christian or a real Muslim and not hate his fellow man. To be able to cease repaying hostility with more hostility. If someone could actually do that, they'd go nuts. Their wiring system would fall apart. So if there were truly at the horizontal level such a thing as a real Christian, and suddenly it was announced to God, some angel said, finally we got a real Christian showing up, don't bother to go find him if he says, all right, it's going to happen. He's suddenly going to become a Christian at 7:30 tomorrow night. He's worked, he's fasted, he's prayed, he's done everything that our religion requires, and tomorrow night it's going to happen at 7:30. If you go there, all you're going to do is see somebody go to pieces. If at 7:30 a certain light comes upon the person, they begin to rise up off the ground. Here's all you got to do. Just holler, it's a trick, and I don't like it. We'll try several things, 2 or 3 of them, one of them should be offensive to the guy. You ain't no Christian, it's a trick. You're not really doing that, it's done by mirrors. I don't like your looks. I don't believe any of this shit. Anybody that believes this is an idiot. Let's assume somewhere in that should have made him angry. It should have been the kind of energy that went into him stirred up his molecules in a certain way, and he should have gotten angry. But if indeed he has become a real Christian, in this one example, and you send him in that energy, and if he could do this, and he would not consume it and transform it as he should, you would not see a Christian but just for a split second. After that, you would see somebody go to pieces. Those of you who still concern yourself with justice, if anybody can follow that, you also see why, although some people on life's body are wired up to be critics and say, well, nobody could ever do what Jesus did. Nobody could ever do what Moses said the gods told him to do. Right. They're not supposed to. If they did, they'd go to pieces. The reality of it was having some basis for doing this, of being truly one of the chosen few. Somebody's already used that line, didn't they? All right. The ability. The first time you can experience up to a certain point that I cannot define, you'll know it. That the kinds of energy, and the prime example is that which seems to be some form of anger, hostility, that the energy comes in, and molecularly, it is supposed to make you transform and then retransmit this anger, and you know what you're doing, and you stop it. You do not handle it, you do not entertain the voices, you keep yourself separate from it, that you can be conscious outside of this absolutely mechanical but absolutely proper behavior going on. And then you understand. Then you understand why all over the planet throughout history been people that did not know what they were talking about. That is, they couldn't do it. They were not supposed to do it. But life had men and women audibly speaking throughout history, all over this planet, saying, you should not hate your fellow man. You should not judge your fellow man. And it just seems to vibrate throughout the DNA of all humanity that, yes, that's true. But once you experience it, then you understand why life has been talking about it. Then you understand why fairly ordinary people can stand up and apparently present some kind of sermon or commentary on the need for us to love one another. And tears come to their eyes. And tears come to the eyes of their listeners. That yes, yes, and they all want to hug each other. And yet nothing seems to change drastically. When you can do it, the person that seemed to have sent you that hostility, you'll never forget them. You'll always have a warm spot. You'll always want to send them a non-existent four-dimensional card of goodwill. If not once a year, every time you think about them. Every time you remember the first time that you really saw what was going on, and what a delight that this other what thing, this other piece of life's body said la 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 da about you, and it went in, all the gears were primed, all systems were go, the son of a bitch fired, and you stood aside from it. You'll have a feeling, I'm just putting useless words, but you'll have a recollection, a feeling of that person, of how splendid it was that I knew you, that I was associated. How wonderful it was that you did that. You might also understand some of these other stories throughout religions, wherein life has had men talking about the great prophets, the great leaders being tempted, falling into lower regions of the earth, or going up on forbidden mountaintops and wrestling with their counterparts. Some of the even more exotic ones, that if there is a great God somewhere and then a great anti-God, there's some kind of conspiracy going on. Those bastards are not really at each other's throat. All right, one I threw out several years ago that I don't think but one or two people even heard it. I just threw it out in the midst of something, talking real fast. It was either me or Kyrute. But the possibility of kings of two countries that stayed at war, and yet they were good friends. Literally, they got together. Of course, nobody knew it except them and their immediate retainers. They got together and had drinks and plotted who's going to win the next war on the basis, several ways to look at it, of keeping control, that is, always pointing out the potential danger in our midst, or to our midst, of some other organization, some other tribe, some other country, or you can look at even a broader spectrum if you can do it, how good it is on the economy, how good it is on the spiritual and physical life of the people to stay in a state of readiness, if not overt war. But since, if there were such an arrangement, that these two kings knew what they were doing, they would not actually get into overt conflict and kill off any more than needed to be killed. If the population of young men began to go down, they'd go back to shouting matches. They'd go back to a whole bunch of sword waving. But then people get too fat, the economy becomes sluggish, people begin to fall on easy lard-ass times, and it goes from sable rattling back to fighting. Except these two kings, they get together at least once every weekend. I'm talking about good friends. And they plot out, all right, I'm going to send over my people, but you have a group over there waiting, and don't kill off, you know, as best you can between 100 and 150 guys. But they'll be over there so that you can lay in ambush. Of course, we shouldn't dwell on that. That sort of thing is either good for a nervous laugh, is it not? Or else some of you are wired up to get almost scared to death, that kind of notion. Don't worry, I just made that kind of crap up. Well, I assure you, at least you think I'm giving you a secret message. At the ordinary level, there's no such thing as that going on. There is no conspiracy of ordinary people going on, so don't worry about that. And when it comes to what life is doing, don't take any even money bets. Somebody else wrote me a question last week that's very close to this. Their general tenor of some of their observations and question to me was on the basis would not, if you could identify a real C area in someone's wiring and what seems to be somebody, is it not possible that could be very closely connected or to their D area? Could that not be very closely connected perhaps to their C, to their potential? Yes. If you followed, if the person who wrote that knew what they were saying, yes. If you understood what I just tried to repeat of their question, yes. If we're going to take my detailing of these three forces, these three potentials, the three legs to this eternal dance at our level, is C, D, and E, and the D seems to be, at the binary level, seems to be that which is not immediately profitable, to say the least. If you looked at that as being an unactivated area, then its counterpart is like saying, here's an area in me or another person that I judge from this binary level as being less than profitable. This is not good behavior. This is not beneficial behavior. This is D, as far as I can tell. It is separated by a wall. The other side of that wall is C. The idea, as I earlier noted for you throughout the history of humanity, of man being put here in some way to struggle against evil and to get to be better, to improve himself. You could look at that which apparently, at the ordinary level, is less than profitable. It's that which is evil, non-good in me. The struggle is to turn that very thing, like turning a card over, like stepping into a door just on the other side of the wall. That instead of me being so angry and hateful of people who are not my color, not my nationality, not my immediate family, whatever, is a short step. The salvation from this, the perfection of me, is to go from that, it's just one small step, to being absolutely not like that. The apparent struggle, as it comes out at the human level, against, quote, evil, is a short step, because that which seems to be evil is only separated by a line right there between its exact counterpart, and of course that which seems to be good. Again, you find that the history of humanity is replete with areas that other aspects of life's consciousness can condemn, that people who said that they were up to some good suddenly are killing people in the name of what is good. In the cynic's corner goes, amen. How true, the folly of man. Tut, tut, I'm glad I'm not one of them. How long can I hold up even the appearance of some sort of pseudo-passion of pointing out that in one distinct way that which seems to be everyone's problem, that which all of you in your partnership believes, that here are my personal shortcomings, here are the ways in which I cannot operate in a good fashion, I cannot behave in a goodly manner, I have ungoodly thoughts, I have ungoodly desires. And if I could just suddenly turn them over, if someone would deal me a new hand, I would be goodly, and then surely all of this mishmash about which you discuss and that all these other great mystics throughout the ages have talked about, it would suddenly become crystal clear because I would be a good person. And perhaps, even if I don't reach perfection, if I just get a little bit gooder, when I die, I'll come back and I'll be a leg up on everybody else. How long can I stay passionate about talking to people that I should have more than I do? Well, I say that. That's just my opinion, so take that for what it's worth. My expectations, more people that begin to have a personal understanding, not at this level, it's got to be above that, that of all of that seems to be the desires in me and everyone else to do that which is good is the desire of life to do that which is profitable. And there is nothing to suffer over. There is nothing to plot about. There is nothing for me to make pledges about. There is nowhere for me to look ultimately for someone to whip me into some condition of doing that which is good. You either get the circuits up here that are in a time zone that is now not extant in humanity, and it does that which is profitable, that you are growing faster than life is. You're in a different time zone in life's body, and there's no question about, am I doing that which is good? Am I helping my fellow man? You are living in a different time zone. You are living in a time zone wherein life is helping itself better. You could look at all of human activity, but I guess I'll have to narrow it down right quick. All of that which seems to be involved in some way in improving oneself, whether it's learning how to make millions in the stock market with $10 in your pocket, or whether it's following some mystical system, and then all of that in between. All of it, from one view, I can break down into, guess what? Two different possibilities. That this apparent way in which to improve oneself, spiritually and otherwise, but spiritually is what seems to be of some importance here, right? Yes. Two possibilities in the religion, in the system. is it either seems to offer comfort or it seems to offer information. It does not take a mental Goliath to see that the vast majority of that activity that seems to go on in the mainstream of human life throughout history, under the guise, general umbrella of spiritual systems, the spirituality of humanity, is on the basis of offering comfort. Sure, plenty of them, you know, the preface or the body of the work is to increase your guilt, is to remind you of how much you suffer. Yeah. Then the final refrain of the song, the coda of the number is, it's okay, stick with the church, stick with our organization, and when you die, you'll be all right. Comfort. What could you make of my description thusly of the two general areas in which spirituality seems to probe, between that I've described and on the basis of obtaining some kind of information? Taking my description of it, the proper understanding of what I mean by the information is that which offers only the real comfort. Because who else is comfortable? Pope's not comfortable. No religious people are comfortable because they're only an apartment thin wall away from being not what they are. They're always just one step away from being non-good, thinking non-good thoughts. There is a continuing cloud of guilt, the continuing genetic feeling of incompletion coming out, I repeat to you again, in man's lips as being a moralistic question of doing that which is good. But it's not the fault of your generation, it's not the fault of anyone's culture, it's not the fault of anyone's race or religion. It is the genetic cards as they are being dealt at the horizontal table. But what life seems to be up to with this sort of activity is a kind of information, a kind of unnatural stirring in the highest regions of man's nervous system, i.e. his brain, wherein he begins, a few people, to collect information that is not binarily based. And that kind of information then draws together these two primary probes of either comfort or information. And this comfort of everyone else worrying about how could I live a good life, how could I be a better person, how could I cease worrying about death, how could I cease worrying about the injustices of the world. How else could I put it? Truth is, I can't even put it that way. But having done so, I will not renege. I will not back up. The true sign of a spiritual master is what? Consistency. A stick-to-itiveness. To being able to correctly read the written holy words of our organization and by God to stick to them. And I guess I would have said more tonight, but I left the book at home. I was going to give another spiritual, for a few people, rule that's far beyond the routine world of the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rules and the pithy sayings of Muhammad, may peace be upon him, the humor of Buddha, I should save it for a full sermon and put it out on our marquee. But for the astute, since I think I'll wrap it up, I'll just go ahead and give it to you. It's one way to save me from ever having to work up a good sermon on this subject, because if I throw it out now, I will probably abandon it. Maybe not, but here it is. It's very serious, although some of you will be tempted to give it probably a chuckle or two. Comes from higher authority, beyond even the book. It is this: if it moves, poke it.